Hi viewers. Before we begin tonight's terrifying journey, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon so you never miss another horror story that will keep you awake at night. And now, let's step into the darkness together. These are main characters of the story. Elric Marlowe, the protagonist, a 42-year-old business traveler from Boston. Practical, skeptical, and logical, yet hiding personal guilt. Corvina Hale, the mysterious hotel receptionist, pale and unreadable, who seems to know more than she admits. Veyron Klein, a local cab driver with a superstitious nature who warns Elric never to stay in that room. Eleanor Ray, a previous guest whose name appears in old hotel records, long dead, or perhaps not. Mr. Delacroix, the old, frail manager of the hotel, who avoids eye contact whenever room 666 is mentioned. It was late evening when Elric Marlowe arrived in Rouen, France, his flight delayed by storms that had followed him from the Atlantic. The city streets glistened with rain, lamplights stretching shadows into long fingers across the cobblestones. He was tired, bone-tired, but determined to attend the morning business meeting that had brought him here. When he gave the driver the address, Veyron Klein, the cabbie, went silent. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. Finally, he muttered, "That hotel again? You'd do better sleeping on the streets, monsieur. That place, especially that room, they don't let you leave the same." Elric laughed it off, thinking it just another local ghost tale for tourists. He pressed for details, but Veyron only shook his head. "Ask them about room 666. But don't stay there. Promise me." By the time they arrived, the rain had thickened into a heavy sheet, hammering down like nails on the taxi roof. The hotel rose before them, massive and foreboding. Its name, Hotel St. Clair, was barely visible on the carved stone arch. A building centuries old, once a monastery before being converted into lodgings. Its towering windows were dark except for a single glowing lamp above the reception desk. Inside, the air smelled faintly of mildew and something metallic, like old blood. Corvina Hale stood behind the desk. She wore a crisp black dress, her skin so pale it seemed she had never seen sunlight. Her eyes followed Elric with an unnerving stillness. "Reservation for Elric Marlowe," he said. She tapped the book. "Yes, monsieur. You've been placed in room 666. She hesitated only a moment before sliding the heavy brass key across the counter. Elric frowned. "Is there a problem with the room?" Corvina's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Only if you believe in problems." He took the key, brushing off the strange tension. But as he turned toward the staircase, Mr. Delacroix, the old manager, shuffled into the lobby. His face drained of color when he saw the key in Elric's hand. You gave him that room?" His voice cracked like breaking wood. "No one stays there overnight." "No one." Corvina's gaze didn't shift. Her expression was unreadable. "The system assigned it, monsieur. Rules are rules." Elric chuckled nervously, trying to mask the growing unease. He assured them he'd be fine, but as he climbed the creaking wooden staircase, he couldn't shake the echo of Delacroix's warning. The hallway was long, lined with antique wallpaper that had faded into yellowed patterns. Candles flickered in iron sconces, though there were electric lights installed, none of which worked. His shoes sank into the threadbare carpet, and the silence pressed down on him, broken only by the faint drip, 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 somewhere in the shadows. When he reached room 666, the brass number plate was tarnished, the edges dark with rust, or something else. The key resisted at first, like the lock didn't want to turn. Finally, the door creaked open. Inside, the room was surprisingly elegant, a large canopy bed draped in crimson, heavy curtains sealing out the storm, and an ornate mirror above the desk. But the air was icy, colder than the hall. His breath fogged in the air, though the radiator rattled with faint heat. Setting down his briefcase, Elric laughed nervously. Spooky old hotel, nothing more. Yet as he glanced at the desk, he noticed something odd. Beneath the hotel stationery lay a faded leather-bound guest book, left open. The page bore a single name written in elegant ink. Eleanor Ray, checked in, never checked out. The pen beside it trembled, though no one had touched it. And before Elric could move, the door slammed shut behind him with a force that shook the walls. The slam of the door reverberated through the room like thunder. Elric spun, heart hammering in his chest, but when he grabbed the knob, it refused to turn. The lock clicked on its own, a cold finality that sent chills through him. "Great," he muttered. "Old locks. Probably warped." He forced a laugh to calm himself, but his voice sounded small in the heavy silence. The air pressed down, heavy with the damp smell of stone. He noticed then, the faint drip he'd heard in the hallway hadn't stopped. Now it was louder. Drip, 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 yet there was no leak, no visible source. The sound seemed to move, circling the room like footsteps in water. He set his suitcase on the desk. That's when he saw it. The mirror above the desk trembled, though no draft touched it. Its surface rippled, as if it were made of liquid silver. Leaning closer, he caught his reflection, but it wasn't right. In the reflection, the room behind him was darker. Shadows leaned inward, stretching unnaturally long. And his own reflection was smiling. Elric froze. His real mouth was straight, lips pressed tight, but in the mirror, his face twisted into a wide, grotesque grin. "Okay, just stress," he whispered, forcing himself to look away. But then came the sound, a woman's voice, soft, almost melodic, whispering his name. "Elric." He whipped around. The room was empty. Only the curtains swayed slightly, though the windows were shut tight. The voice came again, this time closer. "You shouldn't have come here." His breath quickened. "Who's there?" The mirror rippled again, and this time another figure appeared standing just behind him in the reflection. A woman in a tattered 19th century gown, hair matted and wet, eyes hollow and black. Her pale hand rested on his shoulder in the reflection, but when he spun around, the space behind him was empty. A sudden chill swept through the room, and he noticed something new. The guest book had flipped to another page. The ink was fresh, glistening as though written only seconds ago. It read, "Elric Marlowe, checked in, pending." He staggered back, knocking against the desk, his pulse roaring in his ears. Then came the knock. Soft at first. 3 steady raps on the locked door. He rushed over, relief flooding him. Maybe someone from the hotel, maybe Corvina. He pressed his ear to the wood. "Monsieur Marlowe," whispered a voice from the other side. It was the old manager, Delacroix. "Do not open. Whatever you hear tonight, do not open the door." The knocking stopped. Silence. Elric backed away, but before he could breathe relief, the voice returned, this time from inside the room. "Don't listen to him, Elric. Let me in." The whisper came from the mirror. And slowly, a pale hand began pressing through the glass, warping its surface like water. The nails were long, jagged. They scraped against the desk wood, dragging deep grooves as they reached for him. Elric stumbled back, knocking over the chair, his body trembling. The mirror cracked. A spiderweb of fractures spread across it, and behind the shards, Eleanor Ray's face emerged, smiling with a mouth too wide, teeth blackened, eyes dripping shadow. She whispered again, louder this time. "You're mine now." The mirror shattered. And in the split second before darkness swallowed the room, Elric saw something crawl out from the broken glass, its limbs bending the wrong way, dragging itself toward him across the crimson carpet. The shards of the mirror scattered across the carpet like jagged ice. Elric backed into the far corner of the room, his breath ragged, his body rigid with fear. From the fragments, the crawling thing dragged itself free. Its limbs were pale, slick, bent at grotesque angles, each movement accompanied by the sickening crack of breaking bones. Its long fingers scraped across the floorboards, leaving deep gouges in the wood. It lifted its head, and Elric saw the face, Eleanor Ray. But not as she had once been. Her eyes were hollow black pits, her skin stretched tight against her skull. Her jaw unhinged wider than any human's should, a low rattling laugh spilling out. You signed the book, she hissed, the words twisting as though spoken from beneath water. Now you belong to this room. Just like me. Elric's heart slammed in his chest. No, this isn't real. He grabbed the bedside lamp, wrenching the cord from the wall, and swung it hard. The lamp smashed against the crawling figure, sparks spitting across the carpet. For a moment, the thing collapsed into smoke. But the smoke did not fade, it twisted, slithered, and reformed behind him. He felt icy breath on his neck. You can't fight what's already dead, it whispered. The lights in the room flickered violently. The radiator clanged as though struck with a hammer. From somewhere beyond the walls came screams, dozens of voices, wailing, begging, crying for release. Elric covered his ears, but the sound was inside his skull. He stumbled toward the door, yanking at the handle with all his strength. Locked. No matter how he twisted, kicked, or shoved, the door did not yield. Then he noticed something horrifying. The room itself was changing. The wallpaper peeled, curling back to reveal stone walls slick with moisture. The crimson curtain sagged, now blackened with mold. The canopy bed warped, its wood posts twisting into shapes like reaching arms. And on the bed lay something new. 3 figures. Elric froze, bile rising in his throat. They were people once. A man, a woman, and a child. All in varying states of decay, as though they'd been lying there for decades. Their mouths hung open in silent screams, and their hands were positioned as if clawing for escape. As Elric stared in horror, their heads turned toward him in perfect unison. Eyes cloudy, mouths opening. From their throats came a low moan, one word repeated again and again. Stay, stay, stay. Elric stumbled back, his legs nearly giving out. His rational mind fought desperately for control. It's hallucination, mass suggestion, stress, it's not real. But then the child sat up. Its lips peeled into a smile that was not human. In a voice far too deep for its small frame, it whispered, Do you know how they died here? Do you want to see? The room went black. Elric was no longer standing in the hotel room. He was somewhere else, the same room, but in another time. The wallpaper was new, the curtains untouched. The bed was clean and made. But on the floor, he saw a man kneeling, hands trembling as he held a knife. A woman screamed in the corner, clutching her child. The man's eyes rolled back as though controlled by something unseen. His voice cracked as he sobbed, It made me do it. I couldn't stop. The room, it wants blood. Then, with one swift motion, he slashed his own throat. Blood sprayed across the wall. The woman's scream rose to a pitch that shattered into silence as the vision blinked out. Elric gasped, his knees buckling as he slammed back into the present. The crawling thing was only inches from his face now, its jagged grin wide enough to split its head in two. Now you've seen, Eleanor's voice coiled around him. And you'll add your name to the book. The guest book, lying on the desk, flipped its own pages violently until it landed on the last one. A pen hovered above it, waiting. Elric could only watch in terror as his own hand began to rise against his will, fingers reaching for the pen. Elric's hand hovered over the desk, trembling violently. His veins burned like fire as though some invisible force had sunk its claws into his nerves, pulling, guiding, demanding. The pen lifted from the table, turning slowly in the air. Sign it, whispered Eleanor's voice from everywhere and nowhere. It's already yours. Your soul is only a name away. Elric roared in defiance, forcing every ounce of strength to pull his arm back. With a guttural cry, he slammed his fist against the desk, knocking the pen to the floor. The room responded with fury. The walls shook violently, dust falling from the ceiling. The 3 decayed corpses on the bed sat up at once, their jaws opening wider than natural, bones cracking with each movement. A chorus of inhuman voices shrieked in unison. Sign the book, Elric. Sign it. He stumbled back against the window and tried to yank it open. But outside was no longer the rain-slicked streets of Rouen. Instead, the window revealed an abyss of writhing bodies, hands clawing upward from a black void. Faces twisted in agony, eyes hollow. Each mouth opened and screamed, but there was no sound. Only silence. Elric recoiled, horror twisting his stomach, and stumbled into the mirror shards scattered across the carpet. They cut deep into his palms, blood dripping. His blood hit the floor and sizzled, as though the room itself was drinking it. Suddenly, the air shifted. The whispers stopped. The silence was so absolute, he could hear his own heartbeat echoing in his skull. And then, he heard it. A voice. Familiar. Soft. His wife's voice. "Elric, it's me. Please. Don't give in." His breath hitched. His wife had died 2 years ago, a car accident that still haunted his dreams. The guilt never left him, he'd been on the phone with her when it happened. Now, her voice filled the room. He turned toward the sound, and there she was. Clara Marlowe. Standing in the doorway, smiling gently, dressed in the same clothes she wore the night she died. "Come with me, Elric," she said, her hand outstretched. "We can be together again. You don't have to be afraid anymore." Tears welled in his eyes. For a moment, he almost believed it. Almost. He took a step forward. But then, he saw it. Her hand. The skin was gray, mottled with rot. The nails black and jagged. And when she smiled wider, rows of sharp teeth glistened where there should have been none. "What's the matter, darling?" the false Clara hissed. "Don't you want to be mine again?" The illusion melted, skin sloughing off her face like wax, revealing Eleanor beneath the disguise. She lunged forward, her hands gripping his shoulders with unnatural strength. Her face pressed close to his, breath rancid with decay. "Sign it, Elric," she hissed, her black eyes burning. "Or I'll carve your name myself." The pen lifted again, floating between them. This time, it wasn't waiting. It slashed across the page, scratching letters violently. Elric watched in horror as his name began to form, one jagged letter at a time. E. L. R. He screamed and grabbed the pen midair. The ink seared his skin like acid, burning deep into his palm. He hurled it across the room, but the book only laughed, an actual sound, echoing like a child's giggle mixed with static. The corpses on the bed collapsed into dust, but the walls of the room began to bleed. Dark, thick streaks dripped down the faded wallpaper, pooling on the floor. And then, the door unlocked. A soft click. Elric froze. The knob turned slowly, on its own. Someone, or something, was opening it from the other side. The doorknob turned with an eerie slowness, creaking like ancient wood splitting. Elric's chest tightened. His instinct screamed not to look, but he couldn't tear his eyes away. The door eased open. The hallway beyond was wrong. It wasn't the dimly lit corridor he'd walked earlier. Instead, the passage stretched impossibly far, the walls narrowing, ceiling lower with each glance. The wallpaper writhed like living skin, veins pulsing beneath the faded floral pattern. A whisper drifted down the hall, faint at first, then closer. "Elric, come find us, come home." His legs moved without permission. He staggered into the hallway, clutching his bleeding palm, heart pounding in his ears. Behind him, room 660 SIX's door slammed shut so hard the walls shook, though no one touched it. He tried the knob. Locked. No way back. The only path was forward. The carpet was damp, squelching under his shoes as though soaked in something thick. His eyes followed the endless hallway, but no matter how far he walked, the door at the far end remained just as distant. Then, he realized he wasn't alone. Shadows moved ahead of him. Human shapes, staggering. At first, he thought they were other guests. Relief flickered. "Hey! Wait, wait! Help me," he called. The figures stopped. Slowly, they turned. Their faces were wrong. Hollowed sockets where eyes should be. Mouths stretched too wide, drooling black ichor. Each wore tattered hotel uniforms from different eras, maid dresses, bellhop suits, reception jackets. Elric froze. The nearest one opened its mouth, and instead of words, a scream poured out, like every guest who had ever died in that room, shrieking in unison. The others joined, the sound deafening, like glass shattering inside his skull. He stumbled backward, clutching his ears. When he looked again, the hallway had changed. The walls were now lined with doors. Hundreds of them. Each one marked with the same brass number, 666. Every door rattled violently, as if something inside was trying to claw its way out. His breath came in sharp gasps. This isn't real. None of this is real. But his hand brushed against one door handle, and instantly he was pulled inside. The hallway vanished. Now he was in another version of room 666. Identical, and yet not. The bed sheets were soaked in fresh blood. The mirror was whole again, but in its reflection, he saw dozens of people, some hanging from the ceiling, some lying mutilated on the bed. And they all turned their heads toward him at once. One stepped forward from the reflection. A man in a torn suit, his neck twisted at an impossible angle. His voice gurgled with blood. "I checked in, too," the man whispered. "And so will you." Suddenly, all the corpses in the reflection surged forward. They slammed against the glass, fists pounding, faces screaming. Cracks spread across the mirror, and hands burst through, grabbing at Elric's arms, legs, hair. He screamed, thrashing, trying to break free, but the mirror's grip was iron. His body was dragged forward, his face inches from the glass. And then, he saw something that made his blood freeze. His own reflection. But it wasn't struggling. It wasn't afraid. It smiled at him with calm, malicious, patient. "You'll be me soon," the reflection said. "You'll stay forever." The glass began to swallow him, pulling him through. Elric's fingernails clawed at the desk, leaving bloody streaks. "No! I'm not dying here." With one final desperate effort, he ripped himself free and collapsed back into the center of the room. The mirror shattered into black dust, swirling away into nothingness. For a brief, fragile moment, silence. Then, faintly, from the hallway outside. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Coming closer. The footsteps echoed closer, each one deliberate, each one vibrating through the warped wooden floor. Elric pressed his back against the wall, his breath shallow, every nerve in his body screaming for silence. The corridor outside room 666 flickered with light, shadows stretching long and bending like broken arms. The footsteps stopped just outside his door. Then, silence. Elric's trembling hand reached for the knob. Slowly, he twisted. The door opened without resistance this time. The hallway was empty. But something had changed. The walls were different again, no longer pulsing like skin, but lined with portraits. Oil paintings in golden frames, all depicting past guests. Their eyes followed him as he stepped out, their faces twisted with silent horror. Each painting bore a brass plaque beneath it, engraved with names and dates. All of them ended the same way. Checked in, never checked out. Elric stumbled forward, trying to steady his mind. "It's not real. It's not real." That's when he heard it, a voice. Not a whisper this time, but desperate, human. "Hey! You, don't move." Elric turned sharply. At the far end of the hall stood a man, mid-50s, disheveled, his suit torn and face streaked with sweat. He clutched a rusted iron candlestick like a weapon. "My God," Elric gasped. "You're real, thank God." The man approached cautiously, eyes darting to the walls as if expecting them to lunge. "Name's Adrian Locke," he said hoarsely. "Salesman. Came here 3 days ago. Been running ever since." Elric blinked. 3 days? That's impossible. The staff, Corvina, Delacroix, they'd know. Adrian let out a sharp laugh. "Staff? You think they're staff?" They're part of it. They're as real as the corpses in the bed. They lure you in. And once you're here, there's no checking out. Elric's stomach twisted. The thought had crossed his mind, but hearing it confirmed made it worse. How have you survived this long? Adrian gripped the candlestick tighter. You learn the rules. Don't eat the food. Don't follow voices. And never, ever, look too long in the mirrors. That's how they take you. Elric shuddered, remembering Eleanor's grin. Before he could respond, a sound rippled down the hall. Not footsteps this time, something dragging. Like nails on stone. Adrian's face went pale. Run. The lights overhead flickered violently, casting the hallway in stuttering bursts of shadow. At the far end, something crawled into view. A figure on all fours, its joints bending backward, its head twisting 180 degrees with a sickening crack. Its mouth gaped open, jaw unhinged, letting out a shriek that shattered every portrait frame along the hall. Run! Adrian screamed. The two men sprinted down the corridor, doors slamming shut as they passed, portraits falling from the walls. The thing crawled after them at an impossible speed, its body contorting through the narrow space, scraping against the walls. They turned a corner, stumbling into another hallway. This one was darker, the floorboards sagging under their weight. At the end of the hall loomed a massive wooden door carved with symbols neither man recognized. Adrian shoved Elric toward it. Through there. It's the only safe place. Elric hesitated. How do you know? Adrian's eyes flashed with desperation. Because I've been there before, it's the only room that's not alive. The creature shrieked again, closer now, its breath hot against their necks though it was still yards away. Elric and Adrian shoved the heavy door open and stumbled inside. They slammed it shut just as claws raked across the wood, leaving deep scars. Inside was darkness. Then, candles lit themselves, one by one, revealing the interior. It was a chapel. An ancient one. Stone walls lined with cracked statues of saints, their faces melted as if weeping. At the center stood an altar, and on it lay a book. Not the guest book, but something older, its cover bound in cracked leather, pages yellowed with age. Adrian exhaled shakily. This is the only way out. The truth's in there. He approached the altar, hands trembling as he opened the book. But as the pages turned, Elric noticed something. The words inside weren't written in ink. They were written in blood. And the last page bore Adrian Locke's name. Checked in, pending. Elric's voice cracked. Adrian, stop. It's a trap. But Adrian froze, eyes wide, his face paling as though something unseen had gripped his throat. His body jerked violently, lifted into the air. He screamed as his name seared itself deeper into the page, letters glowing red. The candles extinguished. And in the darkness, Elric heard Eleanor's voice again, soft, mocking, triumphant. Now it's just you, Elric. Just you. The night inside room 666 grew heavier, as if the air itself had become water. Every breath Marcus took felt like he was drowning slowly, and the silence in the room was not silence at all, it was listening. Suddenly, the old mirror above the dresser shimmered. Its glass fogged from the inside, though the air in the room was cold. Words began etching themselves across the misted surface in jagged letters. We never left. Marcus stumbled back, his heart pounding. He rubbed his eyes, thinking it was his imagination, but when he looked again, the letters had multiplied. Join US. Stay. Forever. A sudden burst of whispers filled the room. They weren't coming from one direction but from everywhere, the walls, the floor, even the bed beneath him. The whispers overlapped until they became clear phrases, different voices all crying out at once. He cut us open. The fire never ended. We can't leave, neither can you. The temperature dropped sharply, and then, one by one, figures began appearing around him. Pale outlines at first, like smoke forming into shapes. Soon, Marcus could see them clearly, 7 distinct figures, each with distorted features. A woman with burned skin still glowing faintly like embers. A man whose throat gaped open, whispering endlessly through the torn flesh. 2 children, hands clasped, eyes hollow and dark. An old man with a cracked skull and blood running endlessly down his face. And 2 more, faceless, featureless shadows, their bodies twitching as if they were still in their death throes. They surrounded him, their presence pressing in like a vice. Marcus's chest tightened, his body shaking violently as though every ounce of strength was being pulled from him. The burned woman leaned close, her breath hot against his ear. "We died in this room. Do you know why?" Marcus shook his head, trembling. "No, please." Her skin peeled like paper as she smiled. "Because the room is hungry. And now, it wants you." The walls began to throb, as though alive, pulsing in rhythm with Marcus's racing heartbeat. He stumbled toward the door, but when he reached for the knob, it was gone, vanished into the wall as though it had never been there. The room had sealed him inside. Behind him, the faceless shadows screamed in unison, a sound like tearing metal mixed with human agony. The lights burst, plunging everything into darkness, except for the glowing numbers on the door, 666. Marcus was trapped, and now the guests were closing in. Marcus pressed himself against the wall, breath ragged, as the apparitions tightened their circle. Their voices grew louder, overlapping into a chorus of pain. But then, the whispers changed. They weren't just cries anymore. They were chanting. He opened the door. He let it in. He fed us to it. The burned woman's head jerked unnaturally, and her melted lips curled into a horrific grin. "Do you want to know what really happened here, Marcus?" Before he could speak, the mirror on the dresser flickered, showing not his reflection, but a scene from another time. The glass acted like a window, pulling him into a memory he wasn't meant to see. The room looked the same, but the wallpaper was fresh, the carpet new, the air filled with the smell of expensive cigars. In the vision, Marcus saw a man in a black suit and blood-red tie, an elegant, sinister figure with sharp cheekbones and a smile too wide to be human. His name whispered itself into Marcus's mind, Lucien Marrow. Lucien wasn't just a guest. He was a cult leader. And room 666 had been his altar. The mirror played out fragments of horror. A circle of followers kneeling on the carpet, chanting in Latin. A young woman dragged across the floor, screaming as Lucien slit her wrist and let her blood seep into the walls. Fires igniting in the corners of the room, never spreading, just burning in place as if the room itself drank the flames. Lucien carving the number 666 into the headboard of the bed with a ceremonial knife. And then came the worst, Lucien raising his arms, his voice deep and commanding. "This room is no longer mine. It belongs to him." The shadows in the vision stretched and twisted, forming a figure darker than anything Marcus had ever seen. Horned. Towering. A presence that bent reality itself. Its voice was felt, not heard. "I accept the offering." The followers screamed as their skin peeled away in strips, their blood sucked into the carpet. The room devoured them, one by one, their souls imprisoned forever. The vision shattered, and Marcus staggered back, gasping, his body drenched in cold sweat. The apparitions loomed closer, their mouths opening unnaturally wide, echoing Lucien's chant. The burned woman reached for him again. "We're not ghosts. We're offerings. And tonight, Marcus," her voice cracked like splintering bone, "you'll be the next sacrifice." The walls began to bleed, thick crimson running down in streaks. The bed shook violently, as if something beneath it was alive and clawing to get out. And from the shadows, a deep growl rose, a voice too ancient, too monstrous, to belong to anything human. Marcus realized in that moment, he wasn't just trapped with spirits. He was trapped inside a room that was itself a living altar to something demonic. The room was no longer just a room, it was a womb, pulsing with something vile about to be born. The bleeding walls quivered as if flesh, the floorboards buckled and groaned, and the air reeked of sulfur and scorched iron. Marcus clutched his chest, each breath cutting his lungs like glass. From beneath the bed came the sound of claws, long, hooked, dragging slowly across wood. The mattress bulged upward, as if something massive crawled just beneath the sheets. A voice like molten rock seeping through cracks filled the chamber. The offering has been accepted. The 7 apparitions dropped to their knees in unison, bowing toward the bed, chanting in a dead language that scraped against Marcus's ears like razors. Their movements weren't their own, they were puppets, worshippers even in death. Then, with a violent crack, the bed split open. From the darkness below, 2 clawed hands shot out, blackened and glistening, nails as long as daggers. They gripped the floor and pulled. Slowly, a monstrous form dragged itself into the room. Its head was crowned with twisted horns, its eyes burning coals that pierced through Marcus's soul. The demon's skin shifted constantly, sometimes scales, sometimes burned flesh, sometimes writhing with screaming faces. Its height bent the ceiling, its very presence making the air shake. Marcus collapsed, unable to move, his body heavy as lead. The creature's gaze locked on him. Your fear is the sweetest blood, mortal. You will bleed from the inside. And then, it began. Marcus's nose bled violently, his veins bulged, his body convulsed as though invisible hands were wringing him like a rag. He screamed, the sound drowned out by the apparition's chant. The mirror flickered again. For a second, Marcus saw his reflection, not himself, but his body lying lifeless on the floor, his face twisted in terror. His soul hovered in the glass, pounding to get out. The demon leaned closer, its breath hot and fetid. You are already mine, Marcus. But I want you to watch as the world forgets you. Suddenly, the door that had vanished, appeared again. The number 666 burned brighter than ever. Marcus's last shred of hope flared. Summoning every ounce of strength, he dragged himself across the bleeding carpet toward it. But as he reached out, the faceless shadows hurled themselves onto him, pulling him back, their bodies twitching violently. Their touch burned like acid, their grip unbreakable. Marcus screamed, clawing at the floorboards, leaving bloody trails behind. The demon raised its claws, ready to strike. The chanting rose into a frenzy, shaking the entire building. Lamps shattered, the ceiling cracked, and outside in the storm, the hotel itself groaned as if it were alive. Marcus had seconds left, seconds before room 666 consumed him completely. The demon towered over Marcus, its claws raised high, its voice a guttural roar that rattled the walls. Your blood seals the covenant. Your soul feeds the flame. The faceless shadows pinned him down, their bodies twitching like broken marionettes. The burned woman leaned close, whispering, "Don't fight. It only hurts longer when you resist." But Marcus wasn't ready to give himself over. Summoning the last shreds of strength, he remembered something, Lucian's ritual. The vision had shown him sacrifices, chanting, offerings. But also an altar. The headboard. The place where it all began. With a sudden burst of desperation, Marcus tore free from the shadows, his skin burning where they had touched him. He stumbled to the bed, the cracked, blood-soaked headboard carved with 666. With shaking hands, he dug his nails into the numbers, ripping at the grooves, screaming through clenched teeth. If this is your altar, then I'll destroy it. The room reacted instantly. A deafening scream erupted, not from the demon, but from the walls themselves, as if the entire room was alive. The apparitions writhed in agony, their forms flickering, faces melting. The demon bellowed, its claws slicing through the air, but Marcus slammed his fist against the carved numbers again and again, splitting wood and tearing flesh from his knuckles. Cracks spidered through the headboard. Blood poured from the wall, spraying across the ceiling. The ground shook violently, lamps exploding, furniture levitating and smashing against the walls. The demon staggered, its monstrous body glitching, as if reality itself was rejecting it. Stop, it roared, its voice splitting the air. You cannot break what is eternal. Marcus, bleeding and gasping, spat defiantly. Then I'll end it with me. With one final scream, he ripped a splintered shard from the headboard and drove it into his own chest, straight through his heart. The room erupted. The apparitions shrieked, their bodies disintegrating into dust. The demon howled, its form collapsing into a storm of black fire that was sucked back into the broken altar. The wall split open, bleeding light instead of darkness, until the entire room exploded in a flash that blinded everything. Silence. When the dust settled, room 666 was gone. In its place was nothing but a burned-out shell, charred black, the furniture ash. The cursed door lay on the floor, its numbers scorched away. And Marcus? He was gone. His body never found. Only blood smeared across the cracked wood and a single whisper that lingered in the air like smoke. He chose to be the final offering. The hotel never reopened that wing. Locals said the room was bricked up, sealed forever. But those who stayed in nearby rooms swore they still heard it, faint knocks from behind the wall, whispers begging to be let out, and sometimes, a voice calling a single name. Marcus. That was Hotel Room 666, true haunting. What do you think? Could a hotel room really hold such evil, feeding on the souls of the living? Have you ever experienced something strange in a hotel, or felt like a room was watching you? Share your thoughts and any eerie experiences in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this terrifying tale. And remember, next time you check into a hotel, always look at the number on the door.